The jeers. The cheers. The laughs.
I appreciate it.
And gasps.
I was president of the United States of America for 8 years, which is probably enough resume-wise, but
everything is all there set up.
Everything is there.
Yeah, in the basement. I didn't know.
In this video, we're going to share unknown facts about US presidents. Everything from personal scandals to security slip-ups, including some incidents with nuclear codes. Let's dive in. John Quincy Adams had an odd habit of skinny dipping. This is quite irregular behavior, one you wouldn't expect from a president. He was known to spend most of his mornings skinny dipping. He did this so often that even journalists began to notice a pattern. A female journalist caught him during one of his regular skinny dips and used this as an opportunity to interview the president, refusing to let him dress until he agreed to talk with her. Now, apart from skinny dipping, he was known to have a deep interest in exploration. He loved it so much that he hoped to found different expeditions around the world. The idea of the unknown fascinated him. He planned a particular expedition to the North Pole. The reason he decided to plan an expedition to the North Pole was because of the folklore about the North Pole at that time. Different theories claimed the North Pole was home to giant holes leading to the hollow interior of the Earth. But eventually, he didn't end up exploring or going to the North Pole. This was low-key a shocking occurrence. During their lifetimes, they were both friends and rivals. When they worked together, it produced great results, like when they collaborated to usher in the signing of the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776. But after they ushered in the Declaration of Independence, they began their regular behavior of cat and dog. After that, they fought tirelessly over various issues like the role of government, economic policy, foreign policy, and the Alien and Sedition Acts. In each of these situations, their opinions always seemed to vary. After Jefferson beat Adams in 1800, they finally parted ways. Life has a way of adding dramatic effects to things. They coincidentally died on the same day, which was July 4, 1826. Abraham Lincoln is arguably the most popular American president ever. He led the country through its Civil War, played a major role in the emancipation of slaves, and was an activist. Yes, his accomplishments in office were so great that they overshadowed who he actually was before he became a politician. People rarely know that Abraham Lincoln was actually a lawyer. He wasn't just any casual lawyer, he was one of the most infamous lawyers in the state of Illinois. He was so popular that he and his partners worked on over 5,000 cases while he was still a lawyer. Lincoln wasn't scared of any case. He would practically take any case that was thrown at him. He even represented a railway company and eventually had to sue them to get his pay. One would think that being the president should absolve you from certain rules, but that's in no way true. No one is or should be above the law. Back when Grant was president in 1869, the President of the United States wasn't as protected as modern-day presidents. That's why presidents like Abraham Lincoln and James Garfield could be easily assassinated back then. Grant's security was so lacking that he even drove himself everywhere he went. They could leave the White House any time they wanted. It was just like a regular job. One day, when Grant was riding home in his horse-drawn carriage, he was actually speeding. A traffic officer stopped President Grant and gave him a speeding ticket. That's not only comical, but actually unbelievable. He was the first ever president to receive a speeding ticket while in office. Herbert Hoover was just a different person. People already have controversial feelings about him because of his failure to contain the Great Depression. Although he tried his best to salvage the crumbling American economy by increasing taxes, his efforts were to no avail. Public opinion about him didn't change, the economy wasn't affected, and his whole tenure felt like a falling tree. His failure was a shock to many simply because he was a humanitarian and had impressive achievements before, such as helping to prevent mass starvation in Europe during World War I. Despite being a public figure, he still managed to keep some things a secret. A while before he became president, his son Henry was gifted 2 alligators. His son loved keeping the alligators in his bathtub, but his wife, Lady Lou Henry, hated the animals, so she came up with a plan to make them disappear. When winter came back in 1921, she insisted vehemently that the family should stay at the zoo, but before they left, she had successfully donated the alligators to the zoo. Quite smart. Careful research by historians revealed something eerie. Some documents the historians discovered showed details of a love affair between Harding and his then mistress, Carrie Fulton Phillips. You might expect they exchanged a few letters, maybe 10 to 20, but they exchanged a whopping 250 letters. The affair lasted almost throughout his political career, according to the paper trail. Their affair began when he was a senator and ended shortly before he began his campaign for the presidency. After Harding broke things off, Phillips blackmailed the ex-president, and the secret remained buried. If you think Phillips was his only mistress, you are hugely wrong. He was a womanizer for a reason. Harding actually had a secret child with one of his past secretaries, Nan Britton. Harding had originally met Britton in Ohio when she was a teenager.
DNA testing, and what does it reveal? President Warren G. Harding did father a child out of wedlock. Now, that was a huge source of consternation and conflict.
President Truman, showing no outward signs of disturbance over the incident, carried out a scheduled public appearance at Arlington Cemetery later that afternoon.
Sometime back in 1950, the White House was in very terrible shape. Not only had it faced multiple years of wear and tear, but it had also been attacked, among many other issues. Due to this situation, the White House really needed to be developed. They needed to renovate it. So, President Truman took it upon himself to lead the renovation of the White House during his tenure. During this period, he had to temporarily move from the White House to somewhere across the street. On November 1st, just about 2 days after a failed coup in Puerto Rico, a small group of Puerto Rican nationalists tried to take advantage of the current change in location of the president. They stormed the temporary presidential house in an attempt to assassinate ex-President Truman. One of the men, Tisa Life, came to an abrupt end after he was shot by an officer, while the second, Colazo, was taken into custody in a hospital room.
His accomplice was beyond questioning on a slab in the morgue.
Though he was sentenced for
Though the criminal was sentenced to death, ex-President Truman had compassion for the crook, sparing his life and giving him a life imprisonment sentence. However, the president completely forgave him, freeing him in 1979. Before presidents become presidents, they were once regular citizens who earned their keep daily. Grover Cleveland is the only president before Donald Trump in American history to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. Cleveland began his career as the sheriff of Erie County. During his time as sheriff, he also took on the role of public executioner. Public executions were simply a way to instill fear in people so they wouldn't commit grave crimes. The idea behind him being the executioner is quite cumbersome. He either executes the criminal himself or assigns another officer the task of executing the criminal. On 2 different occasions, however, he didn't reassign the task to one of the officers, he took on the role himself. He personally executed 2 convicted murderers by hanging Patrick Morrissey and John Gaffney. Let's talk about some fun facts about John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was the first ever Catholic president of America. His being Catholic began a cycle of the same recurring ceremony. There's something called the Last Rites Sacrament in Catholic Christianity. This Last Rites Sacrament is like a ritual performed for those who are near death. Saying that John Kennedy stared death in the face daily could even be an understatement. JFK was almost assassinated so many times that he had up to 4 different Last Rites Sacraments. The first one occurred in 1947 when he was traveling through England. Suddenly, he fell ill, and the doctors diagnosed him with Addison's disease, though he was able to pull through. Some years later, in 1951, he traveled to Japan and faced death once again when he fell ill suddenly. He had another Last Rites Sacrament in 1954 when he underwent back surgery and eventually fell into a coma. The last time he received the Last Rites Sacrament was on his assassination date, November 22, 1963. The existence of nuclear weapons in America is one of the major shields it has. The nuclear weapons instill the fear of America in other countries, making all countries that want to attack steer clear of its coasts.
People in the White House are people like us misplacing things, but the nuclear code...
I understand we are all human. We all lose things, but there are some things that should just never be lost. Let's give him some slack, though. The rules the American president has to follow alone are just too much, so there's no way he won't forget something by mistake. Presidents must always wear ironed shirts, always floss, and follow some other rules. And then there's the golden rule: never, stress on the never, lose the nuclear detonation codes. Trust me, when you talk about a president who always looked his sharpest or his best, Bill Clinton should be at the top of the list. However, the fact that he lost the nuclear codes, which are the shields of the nation, is just not forgivable. Let's talk about how it happened, though. There's a briefcase that's always kept close to the president, and this briefcase has the power to launch nuclear attacks. There's a card called the Biscuit, which is a small card containing all the secret nuclear codes for that specific briefcase. Clinton actually lost the Biscuit on the morning after the Monica Lewinsky scandal. When Barack Obama assumed the presidency, he put many stereotypes to shame. Not only was he the first black president, but he was also one of the youngest presidents to ever assume power. Indeed, Obama is known for making a lot of fun jokes, but he still knows when to get the job done. Using his current behavior to judge or picture his childhood would lead you to confusion. Would you believe that when Obama was younger, he was in no way the jovial fun guy we all see today? He was a complete comic book geek, a nerd. This fact was quite unknown to the world until Obama's recent autobiography interview. He mentioned that he would often buy comic books from a local newsstand and also said he was a huge fan of Spider-Man and Conan the Barbarian. He stated that seeing a comic book hero as a character filled him with joy, as it was something he always dreamed of. One of his notable comic covers featured his character in his favorite comic, The Amazing Spider-Man, back in 2009. Donald Trump received a Razzie Award when he was barely an actor. He received the Razzie Award not long after his short role in the movie Ghosts Can't Do That. He successfully took home the infamous award without being an actual actor. All he did was appear in just a few scenes. Other than winning an award he arguably shouldn't have even been nominated for, Trump also had a very controversial opinion during Obama's first campaign. Trump was a very vocal member of the birther movement, which was simply a group of people raising questions about former President Obama's actual birthplace. However, Trump took things to the extreme. He sent private investigators to Obama's native town in an attempt to bolster his accusations. To quell this movement, Obama publicly released his birth certificate, which clearly indicated that he was American. Still, Trump refused to believe its legitimacy.